Hi, I am Tim Chappell, and this is my presentation on the four different forces of flight. Today we'll be talking about the four different forces of flight and how they all work together. So the four different forces of flight all have a huge impact on how the aircraft performs and what it's doing, obviously. And then as you learn very early on, um, the main forces like thrust and lift have to um, do more than their counterparts. So lift has to be more than weight in order to generate lift, or thrust has to overcome drag in order to actually move through the air. The first force that we're talking about is lift. Lift is generated by the airfoils or the wings of the aircraft. Um, Bernoulli's principle is actually what allows us to fly and let the wings generate lift. Bernoulli says that as the speed of a fluid, like air or water, in this case air, as it increases, the pressure decreases. So for example, like on the airfoil of the wing, the bottom is flat, but the top is longer because it's taller. So the air on the bottom of the wing goes slower because it travels a shorter distance, but the air on the top of the wing travels a longer distance and goes faster, creating a low pressure, creating lift um, and allowing us to fly. Some different things that affect lift are things like airspeed, the air density, and then the angle of attack of the aircraft. Weight is our second one. Weight is obviously the opposite of lift. It was trying to bring the aircraft out of the sky. That is affected by gravity. Weight is as simple as sounds. There's no definition for this one. Weight is simply just things like it can be anything from the weight of the aircraft and things inside the aircraft like fuel, oil, or different electronics. It could be things like, the seats obviously take up weight, the passengers, cargo, thing. That is just what is trying to bring the plane down. Um, Things like weight and balance are very important when it comes to like planning um, for different kinds of flights and whatever you're doing to make sure you're not overloading the plane or, having a plane that's tail heavy, which can be dangerous, or a plane that is, nose heavy could be also dangerous, or you don't make sure that you don't have, you know, 20 gallons of fuel in the right wing and then 3 in the left wing. Um, that's weight. Next one we're going to have is thrust. Thrust is the counter drag. Thrust is what is either pulling or pushing us through the air. Um, Thrust can be generated by obviously different kinds of engines. It can be a propeller like ours, or it can be a jet turbine. Um, some things about thrust, as you increase your altitude, um, the less dense the air is, obviously. So the way I think about it is if there's less air in like a cube, there's less to grab onto. So like that's why propellers don't work in space because there's nothing to bite. There's nothing for the blade to grab and push backwards. Um, some things that are affected by thrust are things like the P factor from the propeller, obviously the performance of the aircraft. Um, Another that includes just takeoff and landing distances. Release takeoff distance is affected by thrust. And then in our case, throttle directly controls our thrust. Last one we talk about is going to be drag, which is the opposite of thrust. The way I think about drag is just as simple as it sounds. It's just any kind of resistance going through the air in this case. But the way I think about it to make it simpler is is much like water. So if you're swimming in water or you're in a pool or something and you try to move your hand through the water really quickly, it's difficult because you're experiencing drag. There's your hand's having to move through a substance. So when a plane is trying to move through the sky or through the air, anything that is going through the air is creating drag, no matter how thin it is. So from something as small as the pitot tube to like the windshield, both create drag. There's a couple different types of drag. The main ones are parasitic, induced, and then wave drag. Um, in our case, drag increases with speed, so the faster you go, the more actual drag you will create, and therefore the more thrust you'll have to produce in order to overcome that drag. And then our plane has flaps. The whole point of flaps is to create drag so we can descend quicker without increasing our airspeed. So that concludes my presentation on the four different forces of flight. Thank you.